Good morning. My name is George Hazel. I am a Master Gardener volunteer intern. I am not a seasoned Master Gardener volunteer. I'm a novice, to be honest, and I'm learning so much from my colleagues. And I know today I will learn a lot also from you. Your questions keep us going. Your interest keeps us going, and we appreciate that very much. So we're going to talk today about starting a gardening endeavor. It can be simple, it can be complex. It can be as complex as you want it to make it to be, but we're going to talk about our experience in Northeast Ohio with one such endeavor. Dave over here to the right is my spouse, and he is my right-hand person to help with all sorts of things. As a matter of fact, if I told you about some of the crazy stuff he's helped me with, but he was between jobs because we moved to Northeast Ohio on a whim. We came here in 2018 for my nephew's wedding. The wedding was the 2nd of June. On the 3rd of June, we bought a house with no intent to come from the Kansas City area to buy a home in Northeast Ohio. The entire way back on the 4th was, what have we done now? We've got to go home and we've got to figure out how to sell this house so that we can make a move. But anyway, we moved in August of 18, left that home behind. But what we did in the Kansas City area, which I think is a little bit illustrative in a couple of ways. One, many years ago, we hosted the Kansas City Water Garden Society on a tour. And I'm not making this up, we probably had somewhere around 2,000 visitors at our very tiny lot in the Kansas City suburb of Overland Park, which is on the Kansas side of the state line. That was one thing that I think was foundational. And the other is, in the last handful of years before leaving the Kansas City area, we tore out the backyard just about completely. We tore off a double-decker deck. We put in a concrete patio and then a deck above it made out of modern materials. I can tell you that was a project that was defining in our relationship and defining in terms of how big of a project are you willing to take on in your life, because that was pretty monumental. We're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with various contractors to do this, that, and whatever. We did learn a lot. So I kind of laugh because this project really was so quick compared to what we had done that took for a very long period of time in the Kansas City area. So welcome to this presentation. We've labeled it a new to us kind of garden, and we're going to kind of take it one step at a time. I do want to provide just an ounce of perspective. This is not, do this small task, that small task. It's really kind of structured in the big steps that one should kind of go through to do any kind of a redo of any consequence in your garden. But I do think some of the same steps that are described here, they apply to just about anything you might undertake in your garden. So we're going to give this a roll. We had the privilege of sponsoring a garden tour with the Madison Garden Club in June of 2024. That was an extract from the brochure, and these are a couple of pictures of the garden from the last winter. We all kind of in this part of the country are feeling this is the winter we haven't seen in a while, right? Actually, for a while there, we were getting more snow in Kansas City area than people, friends, relatives back here were getting. I did grow up here, by the way. I left at age 17, went in the Army for 30 years, and decided at some point my last posting was in Kansas City, and from there decided that one day it'd be nice to get back there. We just didn't think it was going to be that weekend that we were going to find a place, and then you'll probably look at it and say, what were they thinking about? But anyway, we did have some ends in mind. So we're going to go ahead and go through. This is the beginning of a handful of infomercials that are included in the presentation today. And I apologize for anybody that this is repetitive in terms of other things that you've seen or know about the spotted lanternfly. It is a big deal to the country. It's a big deal locally. The spotted lanternfly is an invasive species. There was a question early on about what should we do with it. Was I right when I stepped on it? Answer is yes. You want to eradicate any of them you see. It's already pretty well taken over in Cuyahoga County, and a number of you I know are from Cuyahoga County. Welcome to our group today. But it is still not considered to be pervasive yet in Lake County. So we're still asking you on the spotted lanternfly, as an example, is to please kill it, take picture, report it, so that we represent the larger ag community, if you will, in Lake County, so that the heads up are to the people who are going to be most impacted. Grape farmers, as an example, are clearly going to be impacted significantly. So first thing in 14, now in 18 states in the country. And I just read a publication the other day that it is considered to be, there was a class, but in 18 counties, Ohio's got 88 counties, learned that in grade school. 88 counties, 18 of them, you don't report on that because it's already considered to be there. Cuyahoga is one of those that you do not do daily reports on anything you see with spotted lanternfly. So these are pictures of the various states of development of a spotted lanternfly. And it's kind of strange. This goes from egg mass, and it shows the time frame that it goes to egg mass as early as September and all the way through the winter period, if you will, before they emerge, just like other creatures in the wild do. And it starts off with some red, black, and white, actually looking kind of attractive there, right? And it's even getting better when it's in the May and July time frame. It's got some blue. And you're thinking, boy, this is a welcome creature to my garden. Well, guess it is not. And it has grown up. It is Asian of origin. And then in an adult form, it's also kind of attractive, but it's a menace. The crops impacted: grapes, hops, apples, maples. So we do a lot of grape production in this region. We do a lot of apple production in this region. I'm not sure how prevalent hops are grown here, but I'm assuming hops is a common crop here. And maples, we package ourselves as a purveyor of wonderful maple syrup. And so maple trees will be impacted by this menace as well. If you detect it, take a picture, report it. But more importantly, if you don't have time to get something to take a picture of it, just make sure you're not missing the opportunity to kill it. And any others around that you see or you can put your foot on. Okay, so this is some of the references in terms of reporting it. So those that are Lake County residents, this is pretty important stuff, is to report it. You've got a number of choices as to how to report it. But the important thing is to let the gardening community as a whole know that they have been observed wherever they've been observed. Building a garden from the ground up, no matter in what form you're finding what you're going after, this is not necessarily a quick endeavor. Sometimes I'm probably the worst offender of the piecemeal approach to gardening. You find one of these, you find one of those, you find wherever, and you find a spot to put it in. But I'm also the master. I will declare myself the master of a person who knows how to transplant. And most of the times I'm successful. There are certain things that don't transplant well. I've even been successful in transplanting a couple of things that they say don't transplant. Peonies, who would know? Peonies, they say don't transplant because they don't transplant well. But I think if you treat the plant rudely enough in the process of transplanting, it may survive. And so we have blooming peonies from my sister that have a familial heritage that bloomed this year, the second year after they were transplanted, when the book says kind of don't do that. So if you've got a peony and you like it, you probably want to keep it in place. Build your garden around the peony. That's an approach. I don't consider anything on this list to be optional, in my opinion, as to how you're re-envisioning or reimagining a new garden. I think they're all critical pieces, and especially that bottom one. None of us would do this if we didn't enjoy it. And when you're done with this project, you really want to sit back and say, boy, look what the fruits of my labor or my efforts, my resources has produced. And so, but also enjoy the process in doing it. And I think that's important. The infomercial person in me has two in here that weren't necessarily in my list to start with, but when our ag educator, Ann Shannon from Lake County, a wonderful educator, a wonderful lady, when she reviewed, she wanted two things to be emphasized that kind of were absent on my first list: soil test, and two, call before you dig. We knew this is in the backyard. We knew there's nothing back there other than one line, but still it's an important piece to do. Did we do it? No. Should we have done it? Yes. So the reason it's here is because I think if you want the best results, you will soil test. That's what the current science says is soil test, so you know if you need any amendment to where you're about to plant something. So that's pretty important stuff. A sketch, I don't know any gardener who doesn't at some point on the back of an envelope, a napkin at the restaurant, a something, where they've sketched out something that they would like to do in their garden. It can be glorious, big, complicated, done by a professional. It can be very simple. But if you have a sketch, it kind of helps keep you grounded in terms of the piece of land you're about to do this in and what the what's are that are going to go into that piece of land. So way back when we went through school, what did they tell you? If you want to learn about something, dang it, you're supposed to be asking yourself these very basic questions in life. It applies to gardening, but it applies to just about everything. Whenever I was out and about and I had to do an investigation of any kind, you just go through the tried and true. And if you're founded in those very basics that we were taught in grade school or by our parents, I think if you keep that in mind, you're going to find that it does apply to what you're doing in gardening in a very real way. And how you answer those questions, or the questions you ask yourself about it, is going to foretell how your outcome is going to happen. So if you're rigorous in the who, what, when, where, how, why, if you're rigorous and ask it of yourself from every perspective. Ask it from the perspective of your neighbors. Ask it from the perspective of nature, of the world. Ask yourself these questions from any which way that it is in your being to do, and I think it will reward you with some thoughts. And what you may want to do may not be the best for your neighbor. It may not be the best for wildlife. There may be something that gives you an outcome in terms of aesthetics or something like that you might find could be done with a native species as opposed to something that is a non-native species. That's just using that as an example in gardening. Down here under the what, I'll just take a second on that one. Edibles versus ornamentals. That's stuck in my brain. We had a class not too long ago here in the Mentor Public Library about growing edibles versus growing ornamentals, and I can tell you I tried this. Not very successfully, but it can be done. The first thing we found out is when we're open to nature is mama and papa and probably grandparent groundhogs would come and pay us a visit, and they would take out every desired cabbage type plant. Wherever they were planted, they would find them and they would be nipped off quickly. We have this constant battle going on with groundhogs. There was one in the backyard this morning that I swear, we called them, one of them was called Wayne and one was called Jane. No offense to anybody with such names or loved ones of such names, but I mean, the groundhog is big. Now, I've been lately growing clover. There's actually been an article in one of the magazines lately that talked about clovering your yard as opposed to maybe some of the more traditional ways that we like to have this ornamental yard that is just pristine. We have a neighbor, we love our neighbors. We have a neighbor that if there's one leaf down, out goes the big revving up John Deere, and it's got the double vacuum containers in the back. Yesterday, I swear there couldn't have been one blade of grass that needed to be cut or swept, and it's running the whole way. So maybe how I kind of can be a little bit presentation anxious. I think whenever anything is going on in this dear gentleman's life, that it's time to get out on the tractor and prove that I can be over my dominion in a very real way. And dang, that leaf should not have dropped in my yard. Some other what's. An oak tree. There's a handful of what we call I would call the cardinal species that really do the overall environment well. And there's probably not anything among them higher in terms of its return on your investment is an oak tree. We'll come back to oak tree later. And evergreens, pick the evergreens that you like. Hopefully not the ones that are invasive. Pick an evergreen you like or types of evergreens you like. Boxwoods are a little bit challenging today. Boxwoods have their own menace coming after boxwoods. And so we're kind of being encouraged to maybe think outside the boxwood lane for an evergreen. And I tell you, I've got boxwoods in the yard. And when I learned last year that you should be not maybe thinking about something other than boxwood, evergreens are what support wildlife probably the most during the off season. It's where they seek refuge from the wind and the elements and the whatnot. And also, when you're looking out your yard, what do you want to see in the off season? There are a lot of things that do look nice, deciduous wise, if you will, in the off season. But evergreens provide, because it's going all year round. And actually, an evergreen also wants moisture all year round. It's still growing. The deciduous tend to kind of go dormant typically, but evergreens want a little bit of attention. If we have a really, really dry winter and you've got a tender evergreen, think about that. What do you do with your evergreen that you've just put in the last couple of years? You may want to consider doing some gentle watering during the right kind of times. Water feature. I have been told, but I can't tell you, I wish I knew who to first credit it to, that if you don't do anything in your yard, provide water. The bees, the butterflies, the birds, the animals, everything, thrives on water. And we've had some periods of time in our winters that are either so cold that everything is frozen, or that we have periods of time where they have no access to water, and they will go to great lengths to find water. So if you provide a water feature, and water feature and rain garden, very different creatures, if you will, and try to think about how you might employ it 365 days a year. We're going to show you how we do it. So some other of those last who, what, when, where, how, why kind of questions, some things to be given some thought to. How's your garden going to perform when it rains? When it rains too much, which seems to be more often than not. This summer is probably a little bit of an exception to that. We haven't had a ton of rain. Maybe in some areas where you live, you have had lots of rain. We're still kind of on the low end of rain here locally, at least where I live. And when a bloom blooms and looks gorgeous, but then it looks less gorgeous, are you going to go out and deadhead it? Or are you going to let it go? Some things, if you deadhead it, you're depriving nature of a source of their food. Coneflowers is one that comes to mind. And I swear, and I'm not making this up, during this past week, I saw finches on done blooming catnip. Every day, you find something different in your garden, and you'll realize that sometimes when we're really fastidious about, removing everything, that's great to encourage reblooming on many plants. But in some cases, it does take away an opportunity for something that you might want to be attracting in your garden. Some other things. Moonlight. We had a gal that is historically been a part of this organization, and she introduced us to white blooms, which seem to have been kind of lost or a little bit out of favor over the years. I think they're coming back. But there's nothing more majestic when you're approaching late into the evening, even after dark, is seeing that amazing iris that is blooming white. Or you're seeing something else, the Gerber daisy, not the Gerber daisies, but the Shasta daisies that bloom white, and other such. But think about how it's looking at nighttime. How's your garden? And oh, by the way, a lot of pollination occurs after sunset. A whole lot of pollination occurs after sunset. I don't know that the after hours pollinators, if you will, if they're attracted necessarily by white, but I'd be willing to bet it's probably easier for them to see something that's white than maybe a lot of other things, but I don't know that for sure. And there have been whole topics taught on some of these things in the lower part. Taking care of what you build and what you plant, protective gear while you're engaging in gardening. How are you going to do it when you've built this new garden? What's it going to be like? As we get a little bit older, myself included, how are we approaching this? Our garden came on just before I had double hips replacements. And I can tell you there, during some of that supervising of contractors doing some work, George is out there on the forearm crutches and pointing out and showing and whatnot to ensure that things are done the way you want them to be done. And there's a reason we have paths in our backyard. And originally we designed paths, and then we went from rudimentary paths to paver paths, because part of the therapy was getting out and moving, and you didn't want to have anything in my way. So we have paver paths throughout the yard, and we've done that in large part. That's one of the considerations as you age. And I'm not saying everybody has to go out and put paver paths in their yard by any stretch, but it is a consideration as to what's going on with that which we undertake. And of course, gardening as a team. Dave and I are out there, and sometimes we can't quite do the same thing at the same time because one's going to over-supervise the other, and chances are he's going to be the one being over-supervised because I think it's a bit in my blood. I was raised by a crusty old World War II sergeant, and he kind of instilled it from a very, very early age. So I can kind of be a little bit overbearing sometimes, and I apologize to all of those over life's journey that I offend. Okay, back to that sketch. Simple or complex? This is actually, and I apologize today for not bringing this, but that was the book that Dave had prepared that shows the garden over time. Okay, infomercial number 2. Don't guess, soil test. It's foundational in the life of a gardener today. I grew up here for 17 years before I took off, and I worked on farms, I worked for my dad, I worked for neighbors, I did whatever in a gardening sense. And of course, sometimes those old habits die very, very hard, but the current science says, don't guess. It's simple, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. You can get your soil test kits right from our extension office, which is on Main Street in Painesville in the old, I think it's an old bank building. They're only $12 a kit, and you can buy an extra piece of it for having organic, I guess you can pay $17 and get organic matter analysis done for you as well. And you just mail that kit in, and you'll get results within a couple of weeks. You get a result. So early on in your planning process, think about that, getting soil test. And then when you receive your results, you don't have to interpret it on your own or take what you got. Make an appointment through the extension office. And Ann Shannon would love to spend time with you. And so this is her phone number down here. And I'm willing to bet that she could probably pull it up while you're pulling up. You may not even need a trip into the office to do this kind of a consult. And she'll give you specifics as to what to do or how to interpret the results that you have got. But they do ask is, call ahead. She's not always there. She's got engagements. She helps in other counties and so on. So a continuation of the environment, if you will, what's in the soil, what's climate, or what's nature giving you in the way of weather patterns and so on. This was last updated in 2023. I don't know when the last update was before that, but this was taught to us. And you kind of take a look at this and you say, wow, I guess northern or Ohio looks all pretty much homogeneous in terms of what kind of conditions you might expect in the way of freezing conditions and so on. Which is why I like to show this one, which was also distributed by Ohio State on our behalf, is taking the state, and you could blow that up even further, and you'll see that Lake County alone has 3 different zones, 6A all the way to 7A. Those that are really close to the lakeshore, it's this lighter, it's almost like a yellow-green color. And that is the best or worst that you find within the entire state footprint. Some parts of the state are very much like this southern county, which is, I think it says Lawrence County. It is all predictably in that 7A category. But so are parts of where we live. We call Cuyahoga County or Lake County home. And I don't know about you, but I like to push the envelope on what might survive. We had a friend that stopped by from Kansas City on their way to visit family in Massachusetts. And they brought a plant, and I looked at it and I saw the zone hardiness of it. And that thing stayed in a pot, in and out of the greenhouse, but it stayed in a pot. Didn't do terribly well in the pot. And then I looked at it and I said, son of a gun, that should do well here. And so last year, it got put in the ground. It's not going back and forth in and out of the greenhouse. It's going to sink or swim in the yard, and it is doing wonderfully. So it's actually, its common name was Egyptian lily. I don't know if there's a better name for it scientifically that people might recognize what it is. Okay, plant light. Carol Powers had this in a presentation I saw of hers some time ago, and it is right on spot. But I tell you, this isn't easy to get right. In the springtime, before the deciduous leaves come up, guess what? Everything is getting sun, unless it's shielded by a fence or a building or whatever. But later in the summer, that sun does what we've been taught in grade school and other about what that sun does in terms of how low in the sky it is. So anyway, there are times when it's kind of here, and there's times that the sun's kind of over there, and then it's time over here. And everyone, depending on what kind of shrubbery, trees, other perennials are growing around it, it's getting a different set of light conditions because some of it we have created, some of it is what just happens. And if I could ever figure this out and do this in a better fashion, I would not be here. I would be making a lot of money somewhere, because I can tell you, I never quite get that right. I can get the deep shade pretty well. Some of these others, is it really going to get enough sun to let this plant be its best? So the whole part of this is to challenge ourselves up front, because if you can get it in the right spot at the right time, you won't be doing what George does. George goes out and he replants it, he replants it, he replants it, and some things, Dave is my conscience here, but we moved in and it's like, why did they have lilies on this side and they had hostas on that side? Let's just flip them. So all of them got dug up and all got moved. And I can tell you that was one thing that we did that we haven't had to redo since we moved in. But we took all the hostas and put them in an area where they had a little bit more protection from that afternoon sun. And the lilies that'll like as much sun as you can throw at them typically are doing better as a result of those moves. But if you want to do less of that rework, that rework, it can be thrilling because you're finally going to get it right, but it also can be debilitating. So these plant guidelines, they're good, but think about it early season, think about it late season, depending on whether you've got a spring plant or a blooming, something that's blooming into the summer. Where is the sun going to be? And oh, by the way, that tree that you just planted, how big is it going to be this year? And should I get out in front of and get out there and save this plant, or is it just going to be flopped over by something that dominates it from within your garden? Okay, so these are pictures that were taken on June 3rd of 2018. And we loved this little half acre. We really did. Enough to where didn't look at anything else really. I think we went one other place down the street just to kind of keep the whole thing a little bit honest. But we saw pretty much a blank slate. Not that we were planning to come in and do anything with that blank slate. We kind of liked it. But, well, we didn't like this shed. This is 1970s shed that was in pretty rough shape. But it had a wide expanse. Now, the family that lived there before us, they had 7 kids and then probably double that in terms of grandkids. And they were up in years when they sold to us, but they had a dog and they had grandkids. And I think this was the best kind of yard for a family with kids. It was a play yard. The backyard was a play yard. I think we saw opportunity, but we didn't have anything in mind at the time. We did know there was a whole lot to mow. Okay, so between that last slide and this slide, we always went to the home shows in the Kansas City area. As a matter of fact, we went to them in our county, as well as we went to them in the metropolitan area. And if we didn't do at least 2 or 3 of these in any given year, where would we go to get some of our inspiration? Of course, you can see it on just about any channel today that you want to get your inspiration. On the 8th of February, which was the last Friday of the home show at the IX Center that year, and on the 10th, we made purchases. Truth be known, we went to purchase a new roof because we knew that roof had been roofed over so many times that it was well overdue to be replaced. What else did we went to look for a replacement shed? Well, the first thing we did on the 8th is we saw this amazing 1,000-pound rock that was plumbed as a fountain. And before we even got over to look at the sheds, we bought the fountain. Then we're walking around the IX Center, and the next thing we see is this absolutely amazing, beautiful greenhouse made in Madison, Ohio, of all places. And that shocked the living bejesus out of me that we had a manufacturer of greenhouses in Madison, Ohio. Right across from the post office, if you've been to the post office in Madison, Ohio. A wonderful spot. I'm not supposed to be advocating anybody in particular, but I can tell you, they're made right here. It's pretty cool. So what did we do? We saw it on the 8th. We went back on the 10th, and we bought it. And we arranged that it would, the price would include delivery and setup we had no idea where it was going to go, but we knew, or at least George knew, that he was exposed to greenhouse work when I was a kid, and I was excited about the opportunity as a budding adult, that it would really be cool to have a greenhouse. So we bought a greenhouse. Then eventually, before we left there, we made a commitment on the replacement shed. We had pads put in for the new building, the new shed, and a pad put in for the greenhouse. We had all the electrical stub outs being done. The lines weren't run yet, of course, but we had that done. And then every time when you think about something that can't be transplanted, this was an existing dogwood that it was like, gosh, but it's the only place that greenhouse can go. Yep, that could be relocated. And this gentleman, a resident of Paynesville Township, as part of the work to do this and that, he said, where do you want it? He didn't work on that for very long. And he single-handedly got that thing dug around, and between Dave and him, they wrestled it into, I think, a wheelbarrow and got it over to another spot in the garden. I wish I would have thought in advance a better spot, because it's not in the best spot now, but at least it's not in the way of the greenhouse. And this is a picture of my unnamed nephew who said, "I see a diamond in the rough with your rotting old shed. It's got the basics of what I need." He moved it onto his property, and you would not recognize that it's the same shed. It's got new siding, it's got new roof, and it's beautiful. But it found another life. Okay, back to answering your questions. So a couple of these pictures or something like it are from the opening slide, but a deciduous that does really, really well for winterscape is the twig dogwoods. I think we got these from a big box store, to be honest, and we bought, I guess, is it 5 or 7 of them? I think it's just 5, 3 yellow and 2 red. And they're amazing shrubs, and they provide us with some interest in the wintertime. Let's get back on task. Okay, let's go back. So a new landscape begins to emerge. Within 30 days, I'm not making this up, the work began, and by 6 weeks, all of those features bought at the IX Center were installed from the times of purchase. So here's that rock. It's got a, how many gallon basin? Under 2,000 gallons, I think, underneath it or something like that. No, it says 1,000 gallons. I think it's actually 2,000 gallons. And we asked to make it a dry display. We're not very good about keeping it dry because, whatever comes at us, we don't pump the water out. So if it's not evaporating as fast as it's accumulating, we end up with it being, a little bit of water in it most of the times. Not necessarily bad. It's a place for the ground animals to get water because otherwise they're jumping up into other things. That's that shed under construction. This is all going on the same week. This was done on a Monday, Tuesday. This was done on a Thursday. This was done Thursday, Friday of that same week. And were we nuts? And in between time, we found time. I was looking at the calendar. We found time to go to a Cavs game one of those nights. Now, is that, yeah, we're nuts. I'd be the first to admit it. This, it's a shard and glass artist did the work on the greenhouse. The guy that did our concrete work had never done pavers before. This was his first cutting his teeth on pavers. He's an amazing talent. We made places to plant things by excavating. We put in crushed concrete, tamped down concrete as our rudimentary paths. They worked great as long as you pick up your feet properly and whatever. But that's what started us out on paths, our rudimentary paths. And then the excavation material was what was used to build the berms. But when it goes back to enjoy what you've created, and we were kind of hoping we would get this, but let's see. So this was the view, and we've taken a number of pictures at various times of the year or different seasons, and this is the view that from our patio we've really come to treasure. And so back to that, one of those pieces, enjoy. This is what we were hoping to achieve. But we didn't really expect it to come through quite as quickly as it did, because it looked beautiful when it was young, new, maturing, as well as it is today in a maturing yard. All the utility work, a lot of utility work was required. What's really bizarre to me is this is a red-headed woodpecker. I don't think anybody planted that in this picture, but I'm not used to red-headed woodpeckers showing up in our neighborhood until early May. But this is sometime in the month of March, early April at the latest. And I noticed in one of those pictures there's a red-headed woodpecker there. We have them, they're all over in the summertime, but we had a visitor there, and we had lots of utility work to do to get gas, electricity, and water into the greenhouse, as an example. 2 years later, gosh, I'd love to think that we could get it right the first time. But it's hard when things are inexact to get things right. And we learn by experience, that we had problems. And yes, we had kind of thought that someday we might have pavers put in. We also had no clue that we would have a kind of a place that would retain water in a couple of different spots. So anyway, that 2 years later, we did some remedies to take care of some of the drainage issues. I shouldn't say we. We asked for our contractor to come back and help us with the heavy lifting. We did a lot of the grunt work, to be honest, but we also had people help us with the heavy lifting. We talk about this concrete gentleman who's now the master of putting in pavers that he started 2 years before at our property. And I call him the maestro. And he and his kid and his brothers who come to out, they kind of all chuckle about us referring to him as the maestro. Somewhere along the way, I think it was last summer, we swapped out the pergola and put in a translucent panel, structural aluminum patio cover that followed generally the same contours we had before as a pergola, and we like that. But here's that fountain, and this is, if there's nothing else that is said here, this runs all year round. Now, I have people that say, why would you do that? To include, let's shut it down and forget about it. But Dave, we want the animals and the birds to have a source of water. So if we shut it down, then you know what George is going to do? George did it in Kansas City for whatever number of years I lived there. I'd take out hot water in the morning and hope it would hang on for 3 or 4 or 5 hours in the wintertime. And the robins would come in from who knows 3 counties away to get fresh water. And so it's back to that thing is, if you're planning something from the get-go, plan water feature at ground level if you've got it in your heart or your capability to do. I think it's depending. Now, during this past winter, and this is the first winter we have run it straight through. Otherwise, we had every heating device for the bird bath. We had every heating device for animals to come up and get a drink. But I tell you, nothing beats something that is bubbling for them to have refreshment. So this thing was entirely encrusted over, but what you could see is the water coming up against the ice. And eventually, the water hits that ice and will break a spot. And if not, we have observed starlings. God love the starling. I know they're the bane of a lot of people in birding, but the starlings would pick at that. They knew it was there. They just had to get it. And the starling is the one that would open it up first thing in the morning to allow other creatures to get a drink. That is a true story. A couple of other features, it said pick some features and what you do. This is a mailbox my dad built for me when I was a young adult. It got rehabilitated by somebody who was willing to do that for us, and it graces the yard. And we put a bench out on the back. But we kind of have always thought about gardens need to have focal points. And if they don't have focal points, because what you want is I think you want your plantings to be an embellishment of you. So what is it that you want to see in your garden? Okay, these were some summer pictures last year. I haven't loaded any new pictures in from this year. But a real quick editorial here on, this is the twig dogwood berries. We are already on our second full flush of berries on the twig dogwoods. Yes, I currently have them. We have them 10, 11 feet tall up against that fence. Sometimes we go out there and go after them, but I can tell you they are so prolific in putting out these berries, and the robins, and the cardinals, and the catbirds, and the, I haven't seen finches there, but we see a whole lot of creatures. First time ever seeing an eastern kingbird was a couple of years ago when they were coming in to devour berries. And of course, what the birds don't get, the chipmunks get crawling up. We have chipmunks. They come with the territory. This is probably a fairly accurate picture of what the fountain looks like today when it's reasonably clean. So, location, vision, pick an anchor. An anchor really is a focal feature. What is it you want to be embellished by your choice of plant material? Pick one. It doesn't have to be more than one. Pick one anchor, and then see what it'll do. Sketch, test, consider materials. For us, if you're relying on outside help, you're coordinating services, installations, and labor. At some point, you need to plan the activities. Contractors will be really good about planning their own activities because they want to get in and get out. But you've got to balance what's being delivered, what's available, your part of the work, whether it's trenching and whatever may be done. And keep that call before you dig in mind. And it is the right thing to do. Number one, it's the law. And so, I'm not proud to get up here and say that, we just dug pretty much willy-nilly in the backyard. We do one electrical line, and we couldn't imagine anything else being back there. And it turned out that was the case. So what we call, this is a new to us garden, but it really it's a transformation from a yard with a lot of grass to mow to something with a lot less grass to mow. Actually, our measure that we're succeeding is we have gotten to the point where we can mow on one electric battery. We no longer need the second one because the gardens are maturing. If your planning is effective, less rework. Compost, amazing product. The best quality you can find, I think, is good to use and produces benefits. Choosing plants, the smaller the better, actually. The only problem with choosing them small, one, they establish better, but remember, they're going to grow up. They're going to go like this, and they're going to go like that, and they're going to overshadow something to the left or right. So probably if there's a word of caution is assume they're going to grow faster than you think they are. Because in this environment that we have for growing, it's a reason this was the nursery capital of the world, is because of the growing conditions here. And I say transplant, 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 because that's what George does best.